First Nations and governments and other interested and affected parties could be working together. And this was sort of, one of the centerpieces of that short document, which was reviewed by a cross-section of people from different sectors to get some early feedback on what an engagement strategy might look like. So there are 3 boxes here. An advisory committee on the left, which is intended to be that multi-sectoral group that brings together all of the different parties to work together on recommendations for an integrated management plan. That box on the left is intended to be supported with an administrative and a technical and a coordinating body, which is called the planning office. So that's people like me and Hillary and Steve who are doing the day-to-day work to move this initiative forward, planning meetings like this, writing documents, that sort of thing. And then on the right of the screen, you have the diagram that shows First Nations, federal agencies, and provincial agencies as the groups that are providing sort of the strategic direction and oversight to this. Now, I think Alex mentioned something called a steering committee. So that's a relationship that First Nations have with federal government agencies that enables a collaborative governance approach to how this moves forward. So that's an important part of that governance framework. So, again, a few less slides. What we did after that short paper in the fall that outlined that diagram I just showed you is try to expand on that. So we know that we can't have everyone on an advisory committee, but we need to provide other ways that people can get engaged in the planning process. So what we did was we created these other proposals or mechanisms for ways that people can provide input and get engaged in the planning process. So you'll see sort of 5 bubbles there. That advisory committee is one of them. And I'll talk a little bit more about each of them as we go along here. So the first one, that Integrated Oceans Advisory Committee, or IOAC. This is intended to be that multi-sectoral group that would try and work together to develop and contribute to the development of this integrated management plan. So obviously we need participants there from all of the different parties, and we recognize that we need to be inclusive in this, but we're also going to need to find a way to be efficient and effective in working together on that committee. So how do we find the balance between being inclusive and being efficient in terms of who needs to be there and how many people should that committee contain? And these are some of the questions that we'll be inviting you to give us feedback on once I've finished this presentation. In terms of what a committee like this might do, it's things like providing input to the development of goals and objectives that would guide this initiative, identifying the priority issues that might need to be addressed in an integrated management plan, and providing input to things like how do we resource this, how do we provide the support to different groups so that they can be engaged effectively. We also recognize that it's likely we're going to want to spend more time on detailed discussions about a specific topic or a specific place, and that we may want to have a group who is focused on that. So we've used this term working groups, which is described on page 6 of that document, to sort of fill this role. So their responsibilities could be things like gathering sort of what we know about a specific activity or about a specific place, so that we're in a position to make sort of informed decisions about what should be in that integrated management plan that gets recommended to governments. It could also be developing some of those recommendations about how to address the issues that they've been convened to discuss. Now, obviously, depending on the topic, membership will be different and will be tailored to that topic. But just to give you some examples to help you understand what a working group might do, I've got a few bullets here. The first one is, some of you may be aware that, for example, in the north of Hecate Strait, there's a wind farm proposed for that area. Now its future is uncertain, and whether or not it becomes a reality in the near future or sometime in the more distant future remains to be seen. But it just so happens that that proposal area overlaps with an important area for a crab fishery, and that in turn overlaps with some important routes for ferries between Haida Gwaii and the mainland. So can we convene a working group to discuss how do we spatially, in space, in that place, how do we arrange for those groups to be able to coexist? How do we minimize the conflict between them? Another example of a potential topic for a working group could be something like the implications of increases in certain kinds of marine transportation or shipping. So there are certain developments proposed for the north coast that may result in increases in traffic. That could also have implications for the north of Vancouver Island. So maybe there's value in convening a working group to look at what does it mean if certain kinds of shipping traffic increase on certain parts of the coast, and what might we do to address that possibility. We also recognize that there's already all kinds of processes that are underway to provide advice and recommendations on how different resources are managed in the marine environment, or how different places are managed in the marine environment. And so we want to be able to draw on the experience and the expertise that exists in those processes to inform integrated management planning in this process. So some of these are specific to an activity, like a commercial fishery or a recreational fishery. Some are specific to an area. But the idea here is that as recommendations or proposals are being put together in the integrated management planning process for PNCIMA, where they are relevant to a specific activity or a specific place, we would take those recommendations out to those advisory structures and invite their review and feedback on what's being proposed, and bring that back into the planning process so that we're moving forward with everyone informed, and also moving forward with input from those who have expertise in those subjects. So again, an example would be that if we're doing something that has some relationship to a specific fishery, it would make sense to take that out to the Fishery Advisory Board. So in addition to all of these different sort of committees, what are the opportunities to engage broader publics in this planning process? Not everybody has the time or the energy or the inclination to be on a committee that meets once a month or more often or through time. So how do we provide opportunities for those kinds of interested parties to also have an opportunity to provide input and to hear about what's happening and stay up to date? So there's been mention of the PNCIMA Forum. Meetings like that are an opportunity for us to communicate out to a very large audience about what we're doing. They're an opportunity for lots of different parties to talk to one another about how they think this should move forward, and to provide feedback to the planning office and the steering committee and the advisory committees that are convened for this. We also recognize that there may be some value in having things like workshops that are very focused on a specific topic, where you spend 1 or 2 days together to discuss and make recommendations about how to address a specific issue, or perhaps to identify the information that's available to inform discussions elsewhere about that issue, those kinds of things. And in addition to that, there may be other meetings like the ones we're having here, where we come out to communities to sort of keep people up to date and to invite feedback into what we're doing. So on top of all that, lots of people are using the web as a means of communication and as a means of engaging in different kinds of things. So we're also looking at how can we make the most effective use of that. If we go back to the idea of meetings take time, they cost money, so can we use the internet and certain tools that are available on the web to save people time, to save people money, and to enable broader feedback and input to this. And that might include things like polls or surveys to get people's input about what we're doing. It could include things like using online meeting tools, anything like that. And again, we're asking